In November 2021, a record number of people quit their job. Something like 4.5 million people. This broke all kinds of records and doesn't appear to be slowing down. More and more people are leaving jobs that no longer serve them, that mistreat them, all a part of, I'm sure you've heard this term, the Great Resignation. Whether you're one of those people or you're considering it, there are certain financial considerations you should take before making the decision to quit your job. That's what we're talking about today. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Welcome. My name is Adelia Borishade. I am also known as Picky Girl Travels the World. I help Black women master their money so they can live life on their terms. My clients include women pursuing financial independence, those planning to move abroad or travel long term. As you can see, this channel sits right at the intersection of money and travel. If those are topics you want to hear more about, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Did you know that right now in the United States, about 38% of employed workers are actively looking for new employment, while 41% are considering leaving a job within the next 6 months. But what I find really interesting is of those people who are considering leaving or actively looking, barely half of them, just 52%, feel like they're in a financial position to quit their jobs. What this says to me is that before you join the Great Resignation, you need to give it some thought, especially about how you're going to make ends meet until you line up your next job or you make a pivot to something new and you find your footing. So here are the things you need to consider before quitting your job and joining the Great Resignation. The first is to have an emergency fund. I know this sounds like boring, regular, old financial advice, but listen, it may take you longer to find a new job, a new career, for your new business to take off, whatever it is you're planning on doing. Having an emergency fund will keep you from having to rely on credit cards to stay afloat and amass unnecessary debt. It seems that there is this commonly held belief that carrying some amount of credit card debt is normal, it's expected, that's just what we do. We need to stop that kind of thinking. Every time you use your credit card to buy something, you're taking out a loan. I don't think enough people think about credit cards for what they really are. They are revolving loans. If you're finding that you have to use your credit card in order to make it to the end of the month or your next paycheck, you're living above your means. But that's a conversation for another video. Something else you should do before you leave your job is to pay down your high interest debt, including credit cards. If you're leaving your job, you should pay down your high interest debt, if at all possible, and don't continue to create new debt. Keep in mind that if your credit card is charging you 15% APR, by paying it off, you've just given yourself a 15% return on your investment. Or another way you can look at it is if you've been sending your credit card $1,000 a month to chip away at your continually growing balance, and now you pay off that balance, you now have an extra $1,000 a month to build up your emergency fund or put toward your other preparations to quit your job. A harsh reality of life in the United States is that if you don't have a job, you probably don't have health insurance. That's assuming you're one of the fortunate people whose job does offer health insurance. While COBRA is an option, it tends more often than not to be ridiculously expensive for most people. We know that getting insurance on your own can be really expensive as well. So, in preparation for quitting your job, maybe the best move is to use up the health benefits you have while you still have them, or save additional funds in anticipation of paying future medical bills, or you can save up extra money in anticipation of paying future health costs, or identify or research providers for people who provide services to people with very little money or insurance that you could possibly use during that time while you're getting your footing. The next thing you should do before you quit your job is to assess your current spending patterns. Look for ways that you can trim the fat. If you're going to quit your job without another one lined up, you need to have an accurate idea of how much it takes to support you, how much it takes for you to live each month, so that you can plan your exit properly. This is when you're going to want to go through, analyze every single expense, eliminate those subscriptions or those services that you don't really need, so that you can get your budget as lean as possible before you quit. So far, all of the suggestions I gave you seem pretty standard or pretty common knowledge. If your current employer has a tax advantage retirement account in which you participate in, I mean like a 401k or a 403b or maybe even a 457 plan, you need to think about that before you quit your job as well. First issue is if by chance you have taken out a loan on your 401k. When you quit, a lot of times those loans will become immediately due. If you don't have the money to repay them, your balance will be reduced by the outstanding loan, and it could be considered a distribution. So depending on your age, if you are under 59 and a half, that distribution is not only subject to income tax, but also penalties from the IRS. The other issue with your 401k when you leave an employer is, what should you do? Should you leave it with that employer, or should you move it to your new employer, or should you roll over the 401k into an IRA? It might seem like less hassle and less worry to just leave it with your employer. I would caution you before you did that, because there is the chance that you might, as the years pass, you might forget all about that account. And currently, there is no system in place to help retirees or to help people find misplaced retirement accounts. Right now, there are about 24 million accounts with about $1.35 trillion worth of assets in them that are unclaimed, that have been orphaned. You don't want your money to add to that. And I know you might be thinking, well, I only have a few $1,000s in there. But the long-term growth that you would be missing out on that misplaced account could add up to $600,000, $700,000 over your lifetime. That's a lot of money. So I would strongly suggest you really think long and hard about leaving your account with a previous employer. Something else to consider is how much money you have in your 401k at your time of separation may dictate, if you don't take action, how much money you have in your account might dictate what your employer does. Every 401k, 403b, 457 has plan rules. You need to familiarize yourself with those plan rules before you quit. The plan rules will tell you what do they do with accounts of less than $5,000. That will tell you about potential fees that you may incur that your employer had been paying, but now that you no longer work there, but you leave your 401k there may be fees that you are now paying. If the balance in your 401k is less than $1,000, your former employer could just choose to liquidate it, to cash it out, whether you want that or not. That could incur some taxes for you. If you have $5,000 or more, the law states that your former employer must, if you don't tell them what you want to, they must reach out to you and ask, what do you want us to do with this 401k? And if you don't answer, you don't reply, they have to hold it. They can't, if it's over $5,000, they can't just liquidate. But then again, if you don't indicate anything, that's where the plan rules come into play, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. That's why you have to familiarize yourself with the plan rules. Something else to consider is if in your 401k you have been receiving an employer match or employer matching, if you've been receiving matching funds from your employer, you need to understand what are the vesting rules for that employer match. Do you have to work at the company for a certain amount of time for you to be able to keep that money? Are you instantly vested? Do you have to be there 5 years? For instance, if the plan rules, the employer rules say that you have to be employed there for 5 years in order for your employer contributions to be vested, but you quit at 2 years, that means whatever employer match you've received over those 2 years, they get to keep. Depending on your situation, that could be a lot of money. So that may be something you want to take into consideration before you quit. If you're between the age of 55 and 59 and a half, you need to pay attention to the law of 55. The rule of 55 states, if you leave your job in or after the year you turn 55, you can take penalty-free distributions from your 401k. That means you don't have to pay the IRS penalty. But yes, of course, you will have to pay the income tax because 401k money is pre-tax money. Not only is leaving your 401k at your previous employer opening you up to the potential of unnecessary fees, oftentimes employers don't have the greatest selection of investment options. Many times they are expensive and have lots of hidden fees. Separating from an employer, rolling over your 401k into a rollover IRA is a great opportunity to take control of your retirement investing. If you want to do that, but you don't know how, you might want to get on the waiting list for the next Get Started Investing Challenge. That is a 1-week challenge I do with brand new investors or people who want to understand more about what they're invested in for retirement. You can find a link right here and below in the description. Those are some financial considerations you need to take before you join the Great Resignation. Next, you should watch the video I did on money questions, on questions you should be asking about your money, why you don't need to budget. And for those of you who are looking to move abroad or take a sabbatical, you definitely need to watch the video called 10 Money Moves to Make Before You Move Abroad. All 3 of those videos are linked below in the description.